because I come from a background of extensive market research and consulting, where I was doing the forecasting. Where are we moving as an industry from print to digital communications? What's that paperless adoption rate? What's the transition from in-house production to outsourcing? Who are the key players in the market? So Broadridge has been a client of mine for years, and now I get to be on the Broadridge team leading our communications consulting practice. So what I'd like to do with the time today is talk about reimagining communications and those customer connections, and that ties really well to a new podcast series that we've launched as well, entitled Reimagining Communications. I think one of the interesting things that you'll hear out of the conversation, in a lot of the discussion around document redesign, the importance of customer experience, we're covering those topics in that podcast and encourage you to join as well. For Broadridge, many of you must be familiar with Broadridge. It is a technology company in the communications space. The thing that really excited me about Broadridge was 5 billion communications processed and delivered annually across North America, as well as access to 80% of households. So in terms of benchmarking capabilities and really understanding what's out there and understanding best practices, it's really an interesting place to be today. All right, so what I'd like to cover today is the print to digital journey, the importance of a continuous customer feedback loop, as well as the benefits of content syndication, meeting customers where they want to be instead of forcing them back into your experience. Does that sound good? Good? All right, so let's talk about the print to digital journey. So top strategic business objectives for utilities include improving customer experience, security, regulatory compliance, cost reduction, increasing retention, improving data management and analytics. Now the first and third responses here are a tough balance. How do I simultaneously improve customer experience while reducing costs? And it was an interesting setup with some of the dialogue this morning with Genevieve from Hydro-Quebec, talking about the investment up front resulted in call center reduction. That's an important piece of the story. If I can reduce day sales outstanding by getting somebody to pay sooner, that's going to reduce my overall cost of operation. So we think it's really important to be investing in the outbound communication to provide a better customer experience to then meet some of those other KPIs that are really important to your businesses. If we look at the last 10 years of postal volume at the U.S. Postal Service, they've gone from 90 billion communications, bills and statements delivered, down to just under 60 billion over in that time frame. There's a clear migration. It's about 3.5% to 4% year over year attrition in printed bills and statements. But the interesting thing is there's still 60 billion communications out there. And if you look at the different communications that the utility market is distributing, there are many different variations on those communications, many different interesting approaches to communicating with that customer. Now, in terms of redesign, you see some redesign bills and statements on the screen here. How many people have undertaken a redesign initiative in the last 12 to 18 months? Okay, how many are planning to in the next 12 to 18 months? Okay, so I think the interesting thing is there's a lot of print out there, and there's consumer interest in migrating from paper-based to paperless, yet you still have 50% of your customers that would prefer to be paper-based, even if you'd prefer them not to be. So there is finding this balance, this importance of, well, we understand that the digital is driving people to new experiences, and there are ways that you can take advantage of that. You also need to be reinvesting in that printed communication because it's still an important delivery channel for many of your customers. So then there's that balance of those customers who receive the printed communication but also want to access it digitally. We call those the double dippers. And why do you double dip? I want the hard copy for my records. So it's an archive, a storage thing. I had 7 or 10 years of utility bills in a banker's box in my closet. I had no idea why, but it was just the process, right? I open all my bills, and I file them all because that's what I've always done. It's also my reminder to pay the bills. Everybody has great stories on how you think about your own household. You have to trip over it as you go out the door, and you can't move it until you pay it. You pin it up somewhere, it goes on your computer. So there's an interesting tactile nature to having that physical document. But then it's interesting, if you look at the bottom three responses here, I haven't gotten around to stopping, right? So there's a consumer inertia component. My providers don't have a paperless option. I don't know if they have an option. So sometimes there's just a communication that needs to be happening to help facilitate that migration. So when we asked businesses about how they could, consumers, how they could provide or improve the transactional communications they send by mail, when I was doing this research in my last life, we found out that it was make them easier to understand, make them relevant to me, personalize the content. So easier to understand, there's your redesign. And we've heard some that have gone through that redesign exercise and others that have it to come. But when you do that, are you providing relevance in those communications? Are you personalizing that communication? You'll hear a little bit later about some people that would prefer to be communicated in a more personalized way from their providers. If you have that information, and for those of you that were in the session where Heather was talking about the Chick-fil-A experience and getting that single view of customer, that's really important to the consumer today. So once you undertake that redesign, as Southern California Edison did, it's really important also to be communicating, here's what you expect, here's what you should be seeing. You should see these changes coming in the mail. And we've seen a lot of redesign from the utility market to the credit card market and others, where there are a lot of companies undertaking those initiatives, but they're also making sure that they're communicating out, here are the changes that you can expect to see, and that's really important. In that redesign, it's not just what's in the envelope, think about the back of the envelope. So these are some of the communications that I saw across utility bills in terms of the back of the envelope strategy around digital engagement, around the informational or upsell opportunity. So how are you using the envelope to help to facilitate stronger communications as well? Also, when you're looking at your energy reports, that's an important communication as well, especially thinking about what's a good design approach to that. How do I move from black and white to color? What are some different elements that I can think about? If you're implementing a smart meter approach, you can see Nicor Gas went with a postcard, front and back, where Pacific Power went with a letter with an infographic in full color. So different approaches to driving awareness in print. But utilities are also embracing new approaches to communications, and probably at a slower pace than some of the other industries that we track. But there is, migration to a text to pay. How many people offer text to pay today? Right, so just a couple. Incorporating the use of video. So the latest thing in video right now is fully personalized or interactive video. But one step back from that is just providing good video content, engaging digital content that can help provide a better experience and can help inform and educate your customer as well. And then there's also that move to mobile apps. How many utilities have a mobile app in place today? Okay, so many of those in the room have a mobile app in place. Just a few offer text to pay. You can kind of see that, the leading edge of maybe one of the next approaches in the market. So a similar question around what are you looking for in the transactional communications you receive now electronically instead of in print? The top response for digital was make them easier to access. Access is a really important piece of this, and I think that's where content syndication comes in. So how do I deliver content to where the consumer already lives? If you put your own consumer hat on, think about how you're managing your household bills today. Even if that one utility website experience is really strong, let's think about the experience as a consumer to have to go to 12, 15 different websites, remember your user ID and password, remember the navigation, have different lengths of archives across those communications. It's a lot more painful for the consumer than it is from wearing your business hat in a business case of one. We have a great utility digital experience. So there's a balance to how your consumers, how your customers want to interact with you, and it's important to be pushing content to various channels, but also providing a strong experience at your own website for those consumers that prefer to interact with you there. So one of the things that we mocked up for a utility provider in the space when we were talking about reimagining the communication, moving from a printed experience to a digital one, was how do you make an interactive digital experience as well? You want consistency from the printed to the digital communication. So you might have something around your monthly usage or daily usage in the printed communication. But probably the piece that you want to keep consistent across both the print and digital experience would be that top left-hand corner. You know, what's the billing month? How much do I owe? How do I pay? When do I owe? Right? And that experience you can break from print to digital and engage in that way. But then you also have the right side of the communication, which is let's give marketers and operations a chance to have other dialogues with customers when they're in this experience. And I think often the bill has been considered a very operational communication. And marketers say, well, that's not me, I market separately. But it is your recurring opportunity to engage with your customers. Bills and statements are open and read more than any other communication received by mail. So are you making sure that you're communicating with that customer both in a printed billing experience and a digital one? I actually walked through a customer journey of my own. How many people have done customer journey mapping or gone through that exercise? Okay, this is a perfect audience for this then. So I think it's really fascinating to go through a customer journey and identify points of opportunity to improve that customer experience. And I encourage you, if you have not yet done that, go through with your own organization or go through a personal experience with a different provider and see where there might be some opportunities to align. So in my example was a transition from Time Warner Cable to AT&T's Triple Play. And the first awareness was when my front yard was getting torn up because the high-speed fiber was put in. Then I reached out. I reached out proactive. How do I engage with this provider? AT&T comes to my door, converts me to a customer. This is the automated email that comes through and welcomes me. Then I'm talking through text message. Do you want to keep your service? We're running a little bit late to install. Text back keep. The service tech comes and he arrives. They set up my account. I get a lot more email. I get directed to a mobile app download. I have some privacy communications and some marketing communications coming digitally. And then I get to the point where my bill is due and go ahead and pay your bill. In that process, from day one, which was my first thought, maybe I should reach out to AT&T and talk about this, to day 66, which happened to be the day at which I paid, you look at all of the different channels that I interacted with AT&T through, whether the communication that they sent me or the communication that I was sending back to them. And it was a really interesting exercise because you look at how many of those communications were physical, print-based communications, or physical interaction, I guess, with the person coming to my door. And then you look at the balance of how many of those communications were digital. And the importance of balancing that customer experience from a print to digital engagement was really critical for AT&T. And in many ways, they had done well. They had augmented reality on the envelope. They had a QR code embedded to drive me from a physical to a digital relationship. But then there were points of disconnect. For instance, in the salutations across communications, and a lot of people can understand this from your roles, I would get Dear Matt, lowercase, Dear Matt, all uppercase, Dear valued customer, hello valued customer. Nothing says I'm a valued customer like Dear valued customer, right? So what was going on behind the scenes at AT&T is they have a lot of different systems in place and different teams that are communicating to me as their customer separately. Is that familiar to anybody in the room? So it's really important to get to that point of single view of customer. Sometimes you can't go back and, we've made too many acquisitions, we have too many different systems, there are legacy systems in place. For anybody in Tommaso's session yesterday, he was talking about how with the systems in place for SCE, wouldn't even allow you to turn off paper if a customer asked you to turn off paper for certain types of communications. And that's really painful for the customer experience. So sometimes you have to just stick a technology on top of that. Everybody feeds through a common platform, And then you can get to that single view of customer. You're feeding from a single understanding of who that customer is, how they prefer to be communicated with, and you don't have to change, for every engagement from a different line of business or different part of the organization. The other interesting thing here was AT&T did not ask me to go paperless when I had to sign 8 pages of documents to become a customer. There was no request to go paperless. How many companies, how many utilities in the room today ask at sign up, at account opening, well, do you want to go paperless? How many people just say, by default, we go paperless? Okay, a few. And that, again, I come from a background of tracking that paperless migration. That's always a really interesting storyline. What AT&T did for me, they never did that, but they sent me 186 emails afterward, 33 of which were asking me to go paperless. As an analyst, I keep the paper because I want to see how the communication evolves, right? But then what changed, for some of you, you may have seen this as well, your bill is going paperless. As a benefit, here's what we're doing for you. So AT&T has decided they're going to, as a benefit to me, they're going to make me go paperless, unless I want to opt out. So it's negative consent. I was talking to Ray Joseph yesterday. He said that from Con Ed, and he said I could share this. He said Con Ed has that language at the front end. The way we do business is as paperless. If you want to opt back into paper, you can. He said 53% of customers stay paperless at that point. So new customer acquisition, 53% of those stay paperless. 47% ask to instead have a paper-based relationship. But he's already upped the level just from doing that. Well, here's an interesting disconnect. Then I get a note from AT&T after I haven't told them to stay paper-based. They said, it looks like you recently enrolled in paperless billing or changed your email account. Now this is just the standard, if this, then that, right? So this is the message going out because now I'm signified as a paperless customer. And then what made it worse was if you didn't make any changes to your account or you think you got this message by mistake, call this number. So disconnect within the organization between here are what our objectives are, we're going to try to drive people to a paperless experience, and the standard operating communications that are going to then drive call center volume up to have lots of confused customers that probably didn't look at that email that said, congratulations on the benefit of going paperless. So think about that experience as you're trying to meet those objectives along the way. Just to add insult to injury, they also say, and by the way, go paperless, right? It's just that, I'm already have autopay set up. They just already defaulted me to paperless, but here are a couple more things that are in our boilerplate that we're just going to send to you anyway. So to really be careful about the communications you're sending and make them relevant and important. All right, so this comes to the continuous feedback loop. And we heard some great stories this morning from Hydro Quebec and from Chick-fil-A about the importance of getting that feedback. So we just did kind of setting the stage for this presentation. I said, well, why don't I just go get some customer feedback about the various utility bills? So I went out and said, why don't we gather some testing feedback, and let's ask some questions about what information could be better emphasized to make it easier to review your bill. What other information would be nice to see? What makes your bill easy or hard to understand? What would make it easier? And how can you provide and improve those communications? You get some really interesting insight just listening to that customer. So, what we heard was the amount due could be in bold format. The other thing here, if you've done a customer research, is you're getting really genuine consumer feedback, not somebody that is within your company, knows how the systems works, thinks about bills and statements all the time. You're just getting this average person who's reviewing your communication. It'd be nice to see the due date and the billing period displayed more noticeably. So you're hearing some redesign components here. I prefer they emphasize the usage a little more, or at least use different colors beyond gray and black to make it stand out. So let me show one example. This is a Duke Energy bill. It's nothing against Duke Energy as much to say, here's an example of let's listen to a consumer talking about their bill and think about how they might respond to your bill as well. So let's just listen for a minute here.
what makes it hard to understand is that everything kind of seems in the same font size. Some things are capitalized, but it really seems like most things are in the same font size. And it would just be nice if there's a little bit of variation. Maybe like the dates could be larger, or the amount due could be larger, or just the font here and the grayness, it all just seems so bland and like, not that a bill is supposed to be fun, but could make it a little more exciting. That would make it easier to understand. Things that make it kind of difficult to understand are like, I have no concept of what a meter reading should look like, or kilowatt hour usage, like what a good number is. Maybe it'd be nice to have some like comparisons, or like, this is good, keep saving energy, or like this is a lot of energy you're using. Those numbers don't really mean anything to me as they are presented, so that makes it kind of hard to understand what our usage really means.
So it's very authentic, right? We're just hearing this person talking about, alert, right? Like, I'll help me understand my kilowatt hour usage. And I think that this exercise is really important. If anybody would like to do some version of this, we can offer a complimentary version, so you can hear some feedback on yours as well, so feel free to reach out. This same user also went to the digital experience and was very complimentary of saying, they do a really good job of communicating with me in a digital environment. I get text reminders, the layout is really intuitive, but then the feedback that this person gave was, I get a lot of emails and they're not always super relevant, because I am an apartment dweller, and a lot of the communications feel like they're directed to a homeowner, and that really is a disconnect for me. And so again, I think it's how are there ways in your preference management, or let me learn a little bit more about you as a customer? Can you gather some of that information to then make the subsequent communications more relevant? So the other thing in that setup was, I get a lot of emails, was her comment. And I think that's interesting to then look at, well, what if we instead were to push content where consumers already live? Either push an email out that's not a redirect back to the website, but an email that you can engage with it directly. You can make your payment, you can interact with the bill, it's HTML5 design. You can do that in an email channel. But then what if I could also just integrate with something like Google or Amazon or Evernote or Dropbox? What if I could put content where consumers are already storing their content and make it more engaging for them to interact with it there? So here's an example with Google, where directly embedded in that Google experience, you'd be able to see, pay your bill now, launch to that website, and go through that experience. And not just in Gmail, but you have that experience consistent across channels. So if you're a Sprint customer today, you could take a look in your Gmail account, Sprint customer and Gmail, take a look and see if you're receiving your Sprint bill in that channel today. See if you can pay directly embedded in that channel instead of having to go back to the website. Also, if you're able to communicate with your customers where they live, you syndicate that content directly to the locations that matter. So it's not for everybody. And you have the challenge as a provider is you have to offer as many channels as you can feel enabled to do so, because you have varying customer preferences. Some want to be paper-based, some want to be strictly digital, and how do you balance that need? Even in the digital environment, how do you reach them where they want to be reached? So, imagine an Evernote experience where I get a message reminder that my November bill is ready. I click on that reminder, and it takes me to my digital mailbox. So within Evernote, you can see my mail sorted, and I can walk through that experience. One of the things that set back the paperless adoption train from 10 years ago was really poor digital experiences. We pushed people to a flat, static PDF after they had to send a reminder for their password multiple times because they haven't logged in a month and they just don't remember that password, then they get a bad digital experience. So how do we make sure that when we move them from paper to digital, because it's not only as a benefit to me, as AT&T would like to say, right? There's a benefit to reducing your print and postage costs. How do I, when I get somebody in a digital experience, how do I make sure that's a really good, engaging experience? And how do I do that with my consumer hat on as well? How would I like to interact with my providers? So when we asked companies about cloud delivery, we asked consumers about cloud delivery. It's a complex topic, right? So when we ask consumers, if you can only choose one channel to receive your documents on, what channel would that be? It's email. Send me my documents to my email. 70%, 17% said paper, 13% said cloud delivery. Then we walk through it because often what you find in research, if you only do survey research and ask what somebody wants, they don't always know what they want because they don't know what's out there. They don't know the innovations that you're working on. So we went through the process of saying, here's how we could interact in a digital environment through cloud delivery. And then we asked the same question again, and 73% of consumers now said, well, now that I see it, that's how I want to receive the communication. So I think it's really important to be thinking as we think about reimagining communications as a topic, or customer connections, and how we move that experience from an okay experience to a great experience to a point where you really have strong consumer advocates because of the quality of the communications that you're sending. And some people might say, well, we're a monopoly. Why do we have to have strong engagement? I think Hydro-Quebec did a good job of saying, well, that's not the point, right? There are other factors. If I can reduce call center volume, if I can reduce day sales outstanding, if I can keep a happier customer base from a public relations standpoint, those are all good things to be working toward. So if I close with a few recommendations out of this, the first would be to consider that print to digital journey. We have a lot of clients today that are looking at reimagining that communication on the print to digital journey. Sometimes they lead with a digital redesign and then they say, okay, maybe we should think about that print piece. Sometimes they come and lead with a print redesign, and then we help them transform that communication into a digital environment as well and make that interactive and engaging. Also consider the network effect of content syndication. I think this is kind of on the emerging side. So you get a few hands up for text to pay. In a few years, maybe we have a few more hands up on text to pay. Next year, we have some hands up on I'm doing cloud delivery today. But I think it is important to always be looking a little bit ahead because you don't want to just catch up. If you're going to go through that exercise of a redesign and making a stronger communication, you want to leapfrog, right? So in that process, I think it's also important to be thinking about your customers. I've heard a lot about customers today and yesterday, and I think it's really great that people are in that mindset, but make sure that you're not doing this in a closed box. Make sure that you're talking to your customers, your employees, other constituents. I really like that for Hydro-Quebec, one of the things was we're starting with the consumer or residential experience, then we're going to do the business one after, because they recognize those are two different constituents, and it's really important to have a different design for each of those experiences. And ultimately, those designs are probably going to look similar so that you're hitting on the key points that a business has compared to a household or a residence, but you're also recognizing that they are unique and different. So think about the value of that communication. It is your one monthly opportunity to communicate with the customer, and really appreciate the time today. Thank you.